The speed at which things shifted that day still amazes me. I was enthusiastic about the prospect of purchasing my first apartment when I was driving back after a meeting with my agent. The following minute, however, is largely a blur. I'm Sheila, and I've been looking at a prospective two-bedroom apartment that was finally within my price range and talking about mortgage alternatives for the past hour. The meeting had gone smoothly. I had a positive feeling about my chances of being granted the loan. I recall driving down Marshall Street after leaving the realtor's parking lot. I had to adjust my visor to see well because the sun was so bright. That's probably why I only saw the other car in the corner of my eye before everything suddenly went sideways. It was a deafening impact. Metal crunched against metal as the other vehicle slammed into my car at high speed. I felt my car being dragged across the pavement, the world spinning around me in a sickening blur. Then came another crash, this time into something solid. I later learned it was a utility pole. After that, everything gets fragmented. I was trapped in the twisted remains of my car, the steering wheel pressed uncomfortably against my chest. There was a strange smell, burning rubber, maybe, and voices. Lots of voices coming from somewhere outside. I tried to respond but couldn't tell if any sound actually came out. Through my hazy vision, I could see flashing lights. Red and blue strobes made my growing headache even worse. The next clear memory I have is of firefighters cutting through my car. The sound of metal being torn apart was horrifying, but I was too dazed to feel properly scared. They worked quickly, talking to me the whole time, though I can't remember what they were saying. When they finally got me out, everything became a whirlwind of activity. Paramedics transferred me to a stretcher, asking me questions and shining lights in my eyes. They were moving fast, which I guess should have told me how serious it was. "You need emergency surgery," one of them told me as they loaded me into the ambulance. "Is there anyone we should contact?" "My phone," I managed to say, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. "Call my parents. They're in my contacts, Mom and Dad." The last thing I remember is being wheeled through bright hospital corridors. Fluorescent lights flashed past overhead. Someone in scrubs was telling me they were about to put me under anesthesia. Then everything went black. The first thing I noticed when I opened my eyes was the emptiness. Just me, the steady beeping of monitors, and the sterile white walls of a hospital room. My throat felt like sandpaper. There was a dull ache throughout my entire body that even the painkillers couldn't completely mask. I tried to move and immediately regretted it. Every inch of me protested, and I let out an involuntary groan. That must have alerted someone because, moments later, a nurse walked in, clipboard in hand. "Good to see you're awake," she said, checking my vitals. "How are you feeling?" Like I got hit by a truck, I managed to croak out. "How long was I out?" "About 12 hours. The surgery went well." She adjusted something on my IV drip. "You're lucky. It could have been much worse." I glanced around the empty room again before asking the question that was really on my mind. Did my parents come by while I was under? They should have been contacted. The nurse's expression changed slightly, just a flicker of discomfort crossing her face. She busied herself with checking my chart before responding. "We did reach your mother," she said carefully. "We informed her about the accident and your condition, but—" She paused, seemingly choosing her words. "She said they wouldn't be able to come. Something about your sister's high school graduation. I'm sorry. Should we try calling someone else?" "No," I said, settling back against the pillows. "No, this is exactly what I expected." And it was. Some might find it shocking that parents would choose a high school graduation over visiting their critically injured daughter in the hospital. But I knew better. This was just another chapter in a story that had been playing out my entire life. You see, I was born first, a difficult delivery that nearly killed both me and my mother. The doctors told my parents afterward that the chances of having another child were practically non-existent. For 7 years, I was an only child. Though looking back, I realized I was never quite enough for them. Then came the miracle. Against all odds, my mother got pregnant again. Emma was born healthy and perfect. From that moment on, everything changed. No, that's not quite right. Everything crystallized. The pattern that had always been there just became more obvious. Emma was their miracle baby, their second chance, their perfect daughter. Every wish was granted. Every whim indulged. New clothes, the latest toys, the best of everything. Meanwhile, I learned to make do with hand-me-downs and clearance racks. The contrast was most obvious on birthdays. I remember my 13th birthday clearly. I got a modest set of colored pencils I'd been asking for. Before I could even properly thank them, they presented Emma with an expensive new dollhouse. So she wouldn't feel left out, they said, as my 6-year-old sister smirked at me over her much larger present. That became the pattern. Every celebration of mine had to include something for Emma, and her gift was always better. If they didn't, she'd throw epic tantrums, crying about how unfair it was that I got presents when she didn't. Rather than teach her about taking joy in others' happiness, my parents solved the problem by making sure she always got the better end of any deal. By the time I reached high school, I'd learned 2 important lessons. I couldn't count on my parents for anything. And the only way out was through my own hard work. My parents made that clear enough without ever actually saying it. The money was being saved for Emma's future. So I threw myself into everything I could. While other kids were hanging out at the mall or going to parties, I was staying late after school, building my resume. I studied like my future depended on it, because it did. Advanced placement classes, honor roll, academic competitions, you name it, I was there. Sheila, would you be interested in starting a school newspaper? Mrs. Rodriguez, my English teacher, asked me one day after class. We need someone organized and dedicated to run it. I didn't just start the newspaper, I turned it into something the school had never seen before. We covered real issues, not just pep rallies and lunch menus. When the principal saw what we were doing, he approached me with another idea. A school TV station. We started broadcasting morning announcements, covering school events, even doing investigative pieces about local issues affecting students. Teachers couldn't stop singing my praises. The principal even wrote me a glowing college recommendation letter, calling me one of the most exceptional students in our school's history. But at home, nothing changed. My parents barely noticed my achievements, too busy cooing over Emma's participation trophy from her soccer tournament or her B in math. The only person who seemed to notice my success was Emma herself, and not in a good way. God, it's so annoying. I overheard her complaining to Mom one day. Everyone at school keeps calling me Sheila's sister, like I'm not even my own person. It's not fair. Instead of explaining to Emma that she could make her own name for herself through hard work, Mom just hugged her and said, "Don't worry, sweetie. You're special in your own way." All that work paid off, though, when college acceptance letters started arriving. I had options, actual, real options. The best one was from State University, 2 states over. Full scholarship, including room and board. When I told my parents, they barely looked up from helping Emma with her middle school science project. I left for college that fall, with Emma just starting 6th grade. The distance felt good. Necessary, even. I got a part-time job at the campus coffee shop to cover my personal expenses. I threw myself into my studies and started building a life that had nothing to do with being the less favored daughter. My parents would call occasionally, but the conversations were always the same. Emma made the junior high cheerleading squad. Or, Emma got the lead in the school play. Never, how are your classes going? Or, are you eating enough? None of the normal questions parents typically ask their college students. After 4 years of building my own life at college, I made what was probably my biggest mistake. I went back home. I guess some part of me hoped things would be different now that I had a degree. They weren't. From the moment I walked through the door with my boxes, my parents acted like I was an unwanted house guest who had overstayed their welcome. Mom would make these pointed little comments over breakfast about young adults who can't leave the nest. Dad would casually leave apartment rental listings on the kitchen counter. Emma, now 15 and fully embracing her role as the family princess, was the most direct about it. "Why do you have to stay here?" she complained one morning, glaring at me across the breakfast table. "It's so embarrassing having my old sister living at home. None of my friends' siblings do that." I wanted to point out that most parents actually help their kids during the post-college transition, but what was the point? Instead, I threw myself into job hunting. I must have sent out 100 applications that first month. Finally, I landed a position as a junior project coordinator at a tech company. The salary wasn't huge, but it was enough to start saving for my escape. I worked extra hours, skipped lunch breaks, and saved every penny I could. After 2 months, I had enough for a security deposit and first month's rent on a tiny studio apartment. The day I moved out, Mom actually looked relieved. "Don't forget to return your house key," was all she said as I carried out my last box. That little student apartment might have been small, but it felt like paradise. For the first time in my life, I had a space that was completely mine. No one to make snide comments. No one to compare me to. No one to make me feel unwelcome in my own home. I channeled all my energy into work. Every project, every task, no matter how small, I gave it my all. Need someone to stay late? I volunteered. Difficult client? I'd handle it. Latex problem? I'd solve it. People started to notice. A year and a half after starting, I was called into my supervisor's office. I thought maybe I'd done something wrong, but instead, she offered me a promotion to senior project coordinator. The salary bump meant I could finally start putting money aside for my own place. Another year passed, and I got promoted again, this time to project manager. I was actually proud of myself. So I made another mistake. I mentioned it at one of the family dinners I still occasionally attended, trying to maintain some kind of relationship with my parents. Mom and Dad suddenly got very interested, more interested than they'd been in anything about my life in years. "Project manager, that must pay well," Dad said, trying to sound casual. "How much are they giving you?" Before I could deflect the question, Emma jumped in with her usual tact. She looked me up and down and started laughing. "Whatever it is, you should spend some of it on new clothes. You dress like somebody's grandmother." Mom and Dad joined in the laughter, like it was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. I didn't say a word. I just got up, grabbed my purse, and walked out. They could laugh all they wanted. I had an apartment to save for. The next 3 weeks in the hospital felt like an endless blur of pain, medication, and recovery. 2 surgeries, one to repair internal damage, another to fix my broken leg. The doctor said I was lucky to be alive. My hospital room looked like a flower shop. My boss sent a huge arrangement with a note saying my job was secure and to take all the time I needed to recover. My coworkers took turns sending care packages, books, magazines, snacks, anything to help pass the time. Even my old school friends, who I hadn't seen in years, called to check on me. My phone buzzed constantly with messages and calls from relatives and friends. Aunt Sarah called every evening to check my progress. My cousin Mike offered to drive up and help when I got discharged. Even my old college roommate Lisa reached out after seeing a post about my accident on social media. But nothing from my parents, nothing from Emma, not a call, not a text, not even a quick "hope you're okay" message. The empty space where their names should have been on my phone screen felt louder than all the other messages combined. Then, a week after my second surgery, they finally showed up. I was dozing in my hospital bed when I heard the door open. For a brief moment, my heart lifted. They'd come after all. Maybe the accident had made them realize. "Sheila," Mom's voice was sharp, cutting through my hopeful thoughts. "Good, you're awake." Dad hung back near the door while Mom marched up to my bedside. "No, how are you feeling?" "No, we were worried." Not even a "you look better." "We need to discuss something important," Mom continued, her tone businesslike. "Emma got her college acceptance letters. Several good schools want her, but we need money for her tuition." It took me a moment to process what she was saying. Surely they hadn't come to my hospital bed, after ignoring me for a week, to ask for. "We expect you to help your sister," Mom said firmly. "Family helps family, and Emma needs this money for her education." I stared at them, the pain medication making everything feel slightly surreal. "Are you serious?" I finally managed to say. "I'm lying here after 2 surgeries, and you haven't even asked how I'm doing, but you want my savings." "Don't be dramatic," Mom replied, waving her hand dismissively. "We knew you were getting proper medical care. The hospital kept us informed." "Emma has a real opportunity here," Dad added. "She can't miss this chance. These schools won't wait forever." Something snapped inside me. Maybe it was the pain medication making me braver, or maybe it was just 25 years of built-up resentment finally boiling over. "Get out," I said quietly. "Excuse me." Mom's eyes widened. I said, "Get out." My voice grew stronger. "For my entire life, you've made it clear that Emma matters more than me. Every birthday, every achievement, every milestone, it was always about her. I worked my way through college while you saved money for her. I built my career from nothing while you praised her every tiny accomplishment. And now, I gestured at my hospital bed at the machines monitoring my vital signs. I almost died in that accident, and you couldn't even be bothered to visit until you wanted something from me. Now, Sheila," Dad started, finally stepping away from the door, "you're being unreasonable." Unreasonable. I laughed, and it hurt my ribs. I'm unreasonable for wanting my parents to care that I almost died. I'm unreasonable for wanting to keep the money I earned to pay for my medical bills and buy my own apartment? No, not this time. I'm not giving you a penny of my savings for Emma's college. Mom's face turned an alarming shade of red. "After everything we've done for you, everything you've done for me," I cut her off. "What exactly have you done for me? Name one thing, one single thing, you've done for me that didn't somehow end up being about Emma." The silence that followed was deafening. They stood there, mouths opening and closing like fish out of water, clearly shocked that their reliable doormat of a daughter had finally stood up for herself. "You'll regret this," Mom finally said, her voice cold. She grabbed Dad's arm and pulled him toward the door. They didn't even say goodbye. They just stormed out, letting the door slam behind them. The noise made my head throb, but I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I'd stood my ground with them. My phone buzzed about an hour later. Then again. and again. I picked it up to find a stream of messages from Emma. "How dare you refuse to help me with college? You're just jealous because I got into better schools than you ever could. You're so selfish. You don't need an apartment that badly. Mom and Dad are right. You're being completely unreasonable." The messages kept coming, each one more angry than the last. But it was the final message that made my blood run cold. "You know what? I wish you had died in that stupid accident. Then at least your money would have gone to something worthwhile, my education." I stared at the phone screen for a long time, my hands shaking. My baby sister. The miracle child. The one they'd all protected, coddled, and spoiled had just wished me dead over money. My finger hovered over the delete button for a moment. Part of me wanted to erase her words, to pretend they'd never existed. But something stopped me. Instead, I took a screenshot and saved it to my cloud storage. After 5 weeks of hospital food and uncomfortable beds, coming back to my apartment felt like heaven, even if I needed help from a nurse to get up the stairs. Everything hurt. The doctors had given me a long list of recovery exercises and physical therapy appointments, but at least I was home. The first thing I did was call my boss, Mark. I'd been worried about work, even though my colleagues had assured me everything was under control. "Sheila," Mark's warm voice came through the speaker. "How are you feeling? Are you settling back in okay?" "I'm home, but everything's still pretty rough," I admitted. "The doctors say I need at least another month before I can think about coming back to work. I'm sorry about." "Stop right there," he cut me off. "Your health comes first. Just focus on getting better. Your job will be waiting for you when you're ready." I was just starting to feel optimistic when my phone buzzed with a social media notification. My mother had made a post and I'd been tagged in it. My stomach dropped as I started reading. As a mother, it breaks my heart to see such selfishness from my own daughter. After everything we've done for Sheila, she refuses to help her sister get an education. Emma got accepted to several prestigious colleges, but now she might miss this opportunity because her own sister is too greedy to share her money. How can anyone be so cruel to their own family? Emma's dreams are being crushed because of pure selfishness. The comments started rolling in immediately. "I can't believe she would do that to her own sister. Family should always come first. What kind of person denies their sibling an education? She must be heartless." I watched as relatives and family friends, people who'd known me my whole life, piled on, condemning me without knowing the full story. Aunt Linda called me disgraceful. My mother's best friend, Susan, wrote about how disappointed she was in me. My hands were shaking as I clicked the reply button, but my voice was steady as I typed. Let me add some context to this story. 5 weeks ago, I was in a near-fatal car accident. I had 2 major surgeries. I spent 5 weeks in the hospital. During that time, my parents visited exactly once, not to check on my health, but to demand my savings for Emma's college fund. They didn't ask how I was doing. They didn't care about my recovery. They just wanted my money. For those wondering why I said no, I need that money for my medical bills and recovery. But even if I didn't, I earned every penny of it myself. I put myself through college without any help from my parents. They were saving for Emma's education then, too. And for those who think I'm being cruel to my sister, let me share what she wrote to me while I was still in the hospital. I attached the screenshot of Emma's message. "I wish you had died in that stupid accident. Then at least your money would have gone to something worthwhile, my education." So to all of you judging me, I have a question. Would you give your savings to people who couldn't be bothered to visit you in the hospital? To a sister who wished you had died? To parents who have always made it clear that you matter less than your sibling? The silence that followed felt eternal. Then the new comments started coming in. "Oh my God, Sheila, I had no idea." Emma said, "What?" "I can't believe they didn't even visit you in the hospital." "You're absolutely right to keep your money. Focus on your recovery." Even Aunt Linda and Susan deleted their previous comments and posted apologies. The tide had turned completely. But I felt no satisfaction in it, just tired. So very, very tired. It's amazing how much can change in 2 months. The physical therapy worked wonders. I'm walking normally now, though my leg still aches a bit when it rains. The scars are healing nicely. And last week I finally returned to work. The car insurance covered the full value of my totaled car, and I used it to buy a newer, safer model. The first time I got behind the wheel after the accident, my hands were shaking, but each drive gets a little easier. The health insurance payout was even better than I expected. I'd taken out a comprehensive policy 2 years ago, thinking it was just the responsible thing to do. I never imagined I'd actually need it, but now I'm thankful for past me's foresight. Between that and the company insurance, all my medical bills are covered, and there's still plenty left over. Yesterday, I signed the preliminary paperwork for my apartment. The down payment is ready to go, and I'm meeting with the bank next week to finalize the mortgage. Aunt Sarah called last week to keep me in the loop, as she put it. My parents had to take out a substantial loan to cover Emma's college tuition. They're not happy about the interest rates, but they didn't have much choice. They'd already promised Emma she could go to her dream school. 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, hearing that would have hurt. I would have felt guilty. I would have wondered if I should have helped after all. But now I feel nothing. No guilt, no satisfaction, no anger, just nothing. I deleted my parents' numbers from my phone, blocked Emma on all social media, changed my email address. Some might call it running away, but I see it differently. I'm not running from anything. I'm walking confidently toward the life I built for myself. The movers are coming next month. I've already started packing up my rental apartment, sorting through what to keep and what to donate. I came across a picture from my high school graduation last night while searching through old boxes. I'm smiling at the camera while standing by myself in my gown and cap. There were no pictures of my parents. That day they were preoccupied with Emma. I added the picture to the keep pile as a reminder rather than out of nostalgia. The girl in the graduation gown achieved success without the help of her parents. The woman I've grown into doesn't either. There are times when you have to create your own house, your own support network, and your own life. And I have done precisely that.